Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. Hi everyone. This is my first ever Reddit post and I would really like some advice from you guys. It's about my family, specifically about my parents. I have had barely any contact with them for over a decade and now they're suddenly trying to be close to me and my family. The whole thing has been weighing in on me for a while and I honestly don't know what to do. The decision to fund my college education ended up causing a rift between us that has never fully healed. Let me start at the beginning. I have a sister, let's call her Jay, who has always been my parents' favorite child. I don't say this out of bitterness or jealousy, it's just a fact that has been obvious to everyone who knows us. She's outgoing and charismatic and has always been successful in everything she does. She's a few years younger than me and has been a gifted artist for practically her whole life. Growing up, she was the one who was popular in school and loved by everyone, while I was just kind of stayed under the radar as much as I possibly could. She has always been the life of every party. On the other hand, I'm more introverted and bookish, and while I've done well in school all my life and I'm a surgeon now, I've never been the kind of bubbly, artistically talented child that Jay is. To make things worse, I went through a really bad breakup in my sophomore year of college and became very depressed. The whole thing was so traumatizing for me that I barely left my room for months and did terribly in my classes. I was doing pre-med and almost flunked out of college, and my depression kind of affected everyone in my family. I'm not trying to completely villainize my parents or my sister here. They did try to help me, but I guess I was at a stage where none of their well-meaning advice helped me. So for months, I was sulking and upset, and Jay was the one cheering my parents up. After over a year of going through that phase, I finally decided to go to therapy. That helped immensely, and after months of counseling, I was much better. I had developed a better attitude and started focusing on my career again. I got accepted into a great medical school. When it came time for me to go to college, my parents made a decision that surprised everyone. They decided to sell our California beach house, which was worth quite a bit, to fund my education. They had always been very frugal and had saved up a lot of money over the years, but this was still a huge sacrifice for them. Besides that, the beach house is something my mom had inherited from my grandparents, so the fact that she was willing to part with it for my sake was incredibly humbling. I tried to tell them that I couldn't accept such a huge sacrifice, but my mom insisted that I deserved it for pulling myself together and getting into such a great medical school. I won't name it, but it's certainly one of the best in the country. I was grateful beyond words, of course, and promised to work hard and make them proud. But then something happened that changed my relationship with my parents forever. So at that time, Jay had just graduated from college as a business major. She had dreams of her startup, but was struggling with the funding. When she heard about my parents selling the beach house, she convinced them to give her the money they had earmarked for my education. She told them that she had always wanted to build something of her own and that this was her chance to do it, and I could easily get a student loan which would be easy to repay once I became a surgeon and start making money. My parents were sold, somehow. She promised to pay them back eventually, but of course, that never happened. I was devastated when I found out what had happened. The worst part? Jay's startup never actually happened. She had a fallout with her partner and the whole matter, and they just ended up abandoning the project. Jay proceeded to use my parents' money to go on an extended Europe trip by herself, saying she needed it to find herself again and get fresh business ideas. Not only had my parents' sacrifice been for nothing, but they had also let themselves be manipulated by Jay, who had always been the apple of their eye. I tried to talk to them about it, but they didn't want to hear it. They kept insisting that they had made the right decision, that Jay was just taking a temporary detour before settling down and starting a family. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to stay as far away from my whole family. I didn't go no contact or anything, but our interactions were mostly limited to birthday wishes and sending Christmas presents. Fast forward 13 years. I'm a surgeon now and have a beautiful family with twin daughters. My relationship with my parents has never fully recovered from what happened all those years ago. And now, the reason why I'm posting here, my parents have suddenly reappeared in my life and want to be a part of the family again. Jay is now in her late 30s and recently got divorced. As far as I know, her ex-husband wanted kids and she decided to remain childless. Much to my parents' disappointment, she has also gone no contact with the family for reasons that are still unclear to me. Ever since they heard about Jay's decision, they've been calling me and texting me, wanting to visit and catch up on lost time, but I can't shake the feeling that they're only coming back to me because Jay is out of the picture and they want someone to dote on again. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to welcome them back with open arms and try to rebuild our relationship. After all, they are still my parents and I love them. But another part of me is still hurt and angry about what happened and feels like they only care about me now because their favorite child is gone and they have nowhere else to turn. I guess what I'm looking for here is an outsider's view. My husband is taking the sentimental route and saying we should let our kids have their grandparents in their life. I can't seem to shake off my grudge. Should I try to forgive my parents and move on? Or should I stand my ground and make it clear that they can't just come back into my life whenever it suits them? Update 1. Thank you for all your responses. I'll answer some questions many of you have asked. Forgive me if I miss out on anyone's questions because there are just so many comments. I think the most frequent question I've gotten is if this is the first time in 13 years that my parents have tried to reach out. The answer is a bit complicated. I am the one who has consciously created the distance between us, but they haven't been very eager to reach out either until Jay's divorce and her going no contact. I have barely spoken to Jay in the past decade. I still haven't forgiven her for her selfishness. My kids are around 18 months old and they have never met my parents, so you get the picture. The last time I saw my parents was several years ago when I went to my hometown to attend my childhood bestie's wedding. Update 2. My parents showed up at my anniversary party unannounced. It has been around a week since my last update, and many of you suggested talking to my parents and establishing boundaries. So I was sort of in touch with my mom and mentioned to her that I would be busy this week because I was planning to throw a small anniversary party at our house. I probably shouldn't have said that, but I could have never imagined that they would show up like that. A few of the guests had arrived and the party was getting started. My husband had put the kids to bed and was looking forward to having a good time. I heard the doorbell ring and went to get it. My parents were the last people I expected to find at my door. For a moment, I couldn't even react. I just stood there staring at them. To make matters worse, 2 of my husband's co-workers showed up while I was still gathering my thoughts. I invited them in and told them I'd be right there. After they had gone in, I asked my parents what on earth they were doing there. Just as I predicted, they started the "we are a family, we should be together" narrative. They said they wanted to see the kids, and I told them they were sleeping and I can't wake them up. I told them they had to leave because we were expecting guests and I didn't want to get into a fight or anything in front of everyone. By the time my husband had come to check up on what was holding me, he instantly realized what was happening. He very politely asked them to leave for the evening and told them we would have a conversation about the family very soon. My mom was really angry, but they left. The incident ruined my whole evening. My husband and I have been talking since that, and we've decided to have a clear conversation with my parents soon. I'll update you guys on what happens. Update 3. So I invited my parents for lunch. They were surprisingly polite and didn't bring up that evening's drama. They met the kids too, and we had a civil conversation. I told them that we can't just pretend that they didn't betray me when I was counting on them and I need some time before accepting them in my life. My mom tried to be all emotional, but Dad kept her in check. In conclusion, I don't have a neat resolution to this story. My relationship with my parents is still strained and complicated, and I'm still figuring out how to navigate it. I think the most important thing to remember in situations like this is that you have a right to your own feelings and your boundaries. It's easy to get caught up in the expectations of others, especially when it comes to family. But at the end of the day, you need to do what's best for you. If that means cutting off contact with your parents or setting strict boundaries, then so be it. It's not your responsibility to make them happy or fix the past. I do think it's important to keep an open mind and be willing to forgive if your parents are truly remorseful and willing to make amends. It's not healthy to hold on to anger and resentment forever, and if there's a chance for reconciliation, it's worth considering. But it has to be on your terms, and you have to be willing to stand up for yourself if they try to manipulate or guilt trip you into doing something you're not comfortable with. Next story. I, 35, female, met my husband R, 35, male, about 12 years ago. He was a junior engineer at the time, but he was perceptive, considerate, funny, and just overall my ideal guy. The only thing I didn't like was the way he and his brother P, now 38, male, interacted. P loves to talk about how successful he and his friends were and undermines R's accomplishments as, "That's good for your age." R overlooks it because he wants to be supportive of his brother. At the time, I wanted to say something about P's arrogance, since not only was I not impressed by his income, it's not a secret that P is noticeably uglier, inside and out, than his younger brother. I didn't because R preferred I let it be. P continues to do this for the next 12 years. I've tried hinting that we're all doing well and this is an awkward topic, but P brushed it off with patronizing sayings like, "You'll get there." Fast forward to now, we're all married with children. 2 weeks ago, P, wife, and son dropped by for a visit since P was on a business trip. Within a couple of hours, P starts bragging about his recent raise. He's finally broken $100,000 a year, and his wife will be going for a promotion that will land her around $100,000 a year. R was just as supportive as he usually is, but then P goes, "You'll get there eventually." Our son, who was playing nearby with P's son, stopped and asked if that's a lot. P's son said, "Yeah, duh," and I said, "No." P then laughed and told me not to set too high of an expectation for my children. So, and this is where I might have been TA, I laughed and said, "If you must know, 100,000 is what we paid in taxes last year." P and his wife went silent, and R tried to change the subject. Then P suggested that we should get a new accountant because that's way too much for taxes. I lost my patience and asked him how much he thought our job titles should pay in taxes, or if he was still under the impression that his little brother is an entry-level engineer. Admittedly, it was not my best moment, but I really disliked him for trying to put down my husband in front of my son. After they left, I got a text from P about how I owed him an apology for embarrassing him in front of his son. I told him I will not, but I'm happy to never speak of income again if he will stop bringing it up in front of my son. R agrees with me but asks as a favor to let P talk in the future as long as it's not in front of the kids. He says his brother has some self-esteem issues, and if it makes P feel better to pretend he's more successful than R is okay with it. I really don't see the need to keep babysitting an almost 40-year-old man's ego, and frankly, I don't want him anywhere near my son. But as I don't have a sibling with a self-esteem issue, I don't know if I'm overreacting. AITA? Edit. Thanks for the feedback, everyone. This was really helpful in giving both me and my husband some perspective. He's going to chat with his brother about 1, not being kids anymore, and 2, setting good examples for our sons. Also, for the folks wondering, it seems the reason for their dynamic is growing up. P had some social adjustment issues, so their mom asked R to look after his brother. So despite being the younger brother, apparently R just got in the habit of looking after P. Odd, but given mother-in-law is the least confrontational person I've met, not too surprising. Finally, for the folks who asked, no, we, self, husband, P and wife, are middle class, upper middle class, not rich, by our city's standards. Some coastal cities are just really expensive. A lot of $200,000 families here are living paycheck to paycheck. NTA at all. It sounds like brother-in-law is getting worse over time, and that's probably because no one shut down his behavior before. Better late than never. You shut that shit down. Don't apologize. And if he doesn't see the problems with his behavior, tell him not to worry. He'll get there eventually. NTA. Very obviously NTA. And I actually think tolerating this is not in the brother's best interest. No one ever felt better about themselves because they put other people down. Refusing to tolerate this could take the competition off the table and the brother could find other healthier ways to interact. Or he could just tromp all over the boundary and keep acting like an ignorant jerk. I tend to be too optimistic. Next story. I don't like my aunt, Sally. I mean, she's my aunt, so she's family, but if we weren't related, I wouldn't be friends with her or anything. She comes on too strong, and when things don't go her way, she has a fit and cries. X. We, Mom, her, myself, went to visit family in a different state for Thanksgiving. Our state's NFL team was playing the Sunday after Thanksgiving. My aunt wanted us all to go to some sports bar or restaurant, but nobody else wanted to, so we said no. She started whining and crying and then complaining the rest of the day. By the way, she could have watched it at my other aunt's house where we were staying. Since I was a kid, Sally has wanted her and I to be close. When I was a kid, I gave her a few chances and hung out with her if I was off school or something. She always made me do what she wanted, like crafting or going to the art museum. Eventually, I didn't want to do stuff with her anymore because it was almost always some craft. I told her I didn't like doing crafts, and she said, "You just haven't given it enough of a chance." Now I'm in my 20s, and she's basically a relative I see on holidays. I had an uncle on my dad's side, Glenn. From when I was probably 10 to 11, Glenn and I were close. One summer, he was off work for an injury, and I'd go by his house and watch old shows with him, like Andy Griffiths. He got me into NASCAR. I'd help him work on cars, we'd go for bike rides. Even when I grew up, we'd still hang out. Glenn passed away a few years ago. Well, the other day, my mom and I had to take some stuff by Sally. She asked if I worked Monday. I said no. She asked if I wanted to come over and help her wallpaper her guest room. I said no. She said, "Why not? It'll give us a chance to spend time together and catch up." I said, "Nah, doing chores on my day off doesn't sound fun. Maybe one of your friends can help." She said, "We're family, and family helps family. Besides that, I consider us to be friends." I said, "We're not friends." She asked if I considered Glenn a friend besides just my uncle. I said yes. She said, "See? So why can't we be friends? You always kept me at arm's length." I said, "Because Glenn met me where I was when I was a kid and found shared interests and things to do together. You don't. You always want me to do what you want to do and then get pissy when I don't enjoy it. Coming over to help with chores isn't my idea of fun bonding. It's a chore. Just because I was close with Glenn doesn't mean I'm required to be close with you." Of course, she started crying. She said she's just trying to maintain a relationship with her niece since I'm the only one that lives here and she doesn't understand why I have to be so hostile. We left shortly after. My mom said she gets it, but I took it too far by going off. I said I'm sick of her always expecting me to like stuff I don't and asking prying questions like she's entitled to know about my life. She said Sally's the youngest and always got her way, so it's just how she is. AITA for telling Sally why I don't want to bond with her? NTA. She said Sally's the youngest and always got her way, so it's just how she is. I hate this excuse with a passion. Anything that uses "it's just how they are" as an excuse is utterly ridiculous, especially when people just get mad when you answer with, "and I don't want to put up with it, it's just how I am." People like Sally refuse to take a hint. They don't want to take a hint, even if the hint is more of a billboard with an arrow pointing to it. The only way to stop them from pushing is to be blunt and tell them how it is. NTA. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.